Russian forces appear to be regrouping for a possible assault on Kyiv. Authorities in Ukraine say rocket attacks have destroyed an air base near the town of Vasilki in the Kyiv region. Its oil depot was also hit. Russia's defense ministry says its army is continuing its attacks on a broad front. Earlier, Ukrainian officials released CCTV footage of what they say is the mayor of the city of Melitopol being abducted, which you can see at the top of the screen here. Well, the latest intelligence suggests that Russian troops have advanced to within 30 kilometers of Kyiv.
Sunrise in the capital has become synonymous with the sound of gunfire and air raid sirens. These satellite images appear to show Russian forces regrouping for a possible assault on Kyiv. The company that took them said they also show artillery firing towards residential areas, as well as burning homes and other buildings. Russia is expanding its military campaign across other parts of Ukraine, intensifying attacks on cities under siege and hitting new civilian targets with bombs and missile strikes. Residents of this eastern town have been forced underground. I hope that my relatives see me, my sister, my daughter and granddaughter, my grandchildren in Kyiv, and God knows where else, close or far away. I don't know where. The war has put everyone into hiding. Those who ventured out of their basements found their homes destroyed. Still, they carry on.
Where there's life, there's hope, as they say.
As Russian forces move further west, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians flee their homeland. But not everyone is able to. The city of Mariupol is now completely surrounded by Russian soldiers, and everyone inside is trapped.
I say this with pain. Mariupol remains besieged by the enemy. Russian troops did not let our aid into the city and continue to torture our people, our Mariupol residents. We will try again to send food, water and medicine into our city.
Firefighters continue to try and save people from the rubble. Ukrainian officials say more than 1,500 people have been killed. There is little chance that the Ukrainians inside Mariupol will see peace return to what's left of their homes anytime soon.
Well, for more, we can go straight to Kyiv now and speak to DW's correspondent, Matthias Berlinger. Hello to you, Matthias. So we understand that there were air raid sirens again in the morning. Tell us, what was it like overnight in Kyiv?
Yeah, last night was like any other night in Kyiv. There were several times that the air raid sirens went off. I think it was 4 times last night. However, people have gotten used to that already. Some people spend the nights, the whole night, because of the curfew in metro stations. Others just stay in their apartments. So far, the city center hasn't really been hit badly. There have been a few bombs coming down on the city in the beginning, but most of the fighting remains in the outskirts of the city. So people have gotten used to some kind of a more relaxed, fatalistic attitude towards these air raid sirens and are just waiting them out.
Now, Matthias, are there some indications that Russia has somehow reassessed its strategy in the last 48 hours?
I believe there are. We are hearing this from military experts. One thing that they've observed is that this tank column, that 60-kilometer tank column that was stuck on their way to Kiev, has been dispersed, presumably into the woods. We have also seen some troops being withdrawn, probably also to regroup, and we have seen this intensified shelling of or bombing of other cities. And more airstrikes. So it would not be a surprise if they regroup, because their strategy so far has not led them anywhere near their goals. But of course, we are now observing and trying to find out what will be next for the people here in Kiev and in other cities of Ukraine.
Well, I'd also like to ask you about the mayor of the city of Melitopol, Ivan Fedorov. We mentioned he was abducted. Is anything known about his fate or how he's doing?
Well, this is what you call a enforced disappearance, and that's exactly why nothing is known about his fate. He has just disappeared. We can only guess what's happening to him. These guesses would be very bad for him. We know that Russian forces in the past, but also these self-proclaimed republics that are supported by Russia and on which some of the actions that are happening now in these occupied territories are modeled, have a very bad history of torture, of disappearing people, and this is most likely what we must fear for now, that he is being detained somewhere and tortured, but we do not have any information on where and what exactly is happening. The people of Melitopol have come out after this disappearance again and have protested the Russian occupying forces. So there is still quite a spirit of resistance in these areas. But it seems as if Russia was moving on now to applying some kind of repressive strategy to keep these voices down.
That was DW's correspondent Matthias Büllinger in Kiev. Matthias, we appreciate your reporting. Well, elsewhere in Ukraine, there are concerns that Russian forces also have their sights on the city of Odessa in the southwest. The key port city on the Black Sea has so far been spared fighting. Officials suggest, though, the situation could change, with Russia's military planning to attack by land and sea. Odessa's residents are preparing for the worst, with people signing up to defend their city. Well, DW's correspondent Alexandra von Naumann is in Odessa, and she joins us now for the latest from there. So, Alexandra, we understand that Odessa has been targeted by the Russian military for more than 2 weeks. Can you explain to us the strategic importance of the city?
Well, Odessa is of tremendous strategic importance for the Ukrainians and for the Russians as well, and that makes the city a likely Russian target. In capturing Odessa's port, Russia would be able to cut off Ukraine from the Black Sea, from important trade routes. And we also should not forget that taking over the control of Odessa would be a big win for the Russian propaganda, because this city has ties with Russia going back for centuries. It was founded by a Russian Empress Catherine the Great, and many people here still speak Russian. So we can imagine that the Russian forces or the Russian government would be trying to present it as a win for their propaganda. However, we also have to say that people that I've been speaking with told me that despite those deep-seated connections, they are ready to welcome the Russian troops with fierce resistance.
Right. So as we've said, many people do fear that the worst is yet to come in Odessa. How specifically are residents preparing for the possible Russian onslaught?
Well, residents that I spoke with, they told me they are ready for whatever may come. And when you look around, we are now in the historic center of Odessa. You see that the city has been turned into a fortress. There are a lot of checkpoints. There are barricades built of sandbags, but also metal. And we also know that there are tank traps placed at strategically important places here in Odessa. And many here still hope that, that it's not going to happen. But of course, all of them are prepared for a potential Russian assault.
And now, Alexandra, what about just ordinary life activities? Are these continuing? Are shops open? Are people going to work?
Well, shops are open, schools are closed. We learned that if you, for example, go shopping, that's not the case, that they would tell you you are not allowed to buy special goods. However, at the same time, we also have to mention that literally almost half of the city has already left Odessa, fleeing to other parties, to other parts of the country. So the mood is quite tense, but as I said, people here told me that they are ready for whatever may come next.
DW's correspondent Alexandra von Namen in Odessa for us. Alexandra, thank you so much. Well, in the 16 days since the war began, the United Nations says more than 2.5 million people have fled Ukraine, nearly half of them to Poland. DW's Brigitte Schulke traveled to the city of Przemysl near the border with Ukraine, and she filed this report.
After escaping the war zone, their train finally arrives in Poland. Hundreds of women and children disembark to safety at platform number 5 in Przemysl station. Olga and her 2 children have been traveling for 3 days and freezing nights. They're exhausted but relieved to be getting help. Their house in Kharkiv was destroyed in a Russian air raid. They kept bombing us. It didn't stop. We had to take shelter in the bunker and we were trapped there for days. That's when we decided to flee. It was horrific. The children didn't stop crying. We tried to comfort them and tried to stay calm, but inside we were also shaken. They show us blurry photos of Kharkiv, their city in ruins. Their husbands are still there because they are not allowed to leave the country. 4-year-old Vanya doesn't understand why. I miss my daddy. We went on the train and we were going and going and going. In the entrance hall, hundreds of volunteers provide the new arrivals with food, water, clothes, free SIM cards and advice. Like Olga, many don't know where to go from here, nor what to do next. Every day, 5 to 10 trains from Ukraine arrive here at the station, and the number continues to grow. To help all the arriving refugees has become a major challenge for the small city of Przemysl, which itself has only 60,000 citizens. The city's mayor, Wojciech Bakun, is coordinating the humanitarian relief effort. Since the war in Ukraine began, he says he hasn't had more than 4 hours sleep a day. He's proud that his city has managed to provide help, but is worried. He doesn't know how long they can keep it up.
We are the city hall, not humanity organization. So we will be not do this for a long time or for forever. Just we try talk with some organization to help us for a long period of time.
Key, he tells us, is to quickly relocate the refugees to other cities. Olga has finally decided to continue her journey to Warsaw. Before a train leaves, she addresses all NATO states. I want to tell them to impose a no-fly zone, because our families are still there. My parents, my brother, our husbands are there. I want my family to survive. I want the bombing to stop. Once in Warsaw, Olga plans to call her husband and her parents. She doesn't have the strength yet, because she's afraid they might not answer.
For more, we can speak to Chris Meltzer. He's a spokesman for the UN Refugee Agency, the UNHCR. Chris, thanks for joining us. We understand that you've been on the Polish-Ukrainian border for the last 2 weeks, and we know that up to now, 2.5 million people have fled the war in Ukraine. In your assessment, how many more do you expect?
This is very hard to say. We have a planning figure with UNHCR of 1 to 4 million. Well, we have obviously passed the 1 and also the 2 million. Recent figures now almost 2.6 million. And so the 4 million are unfortunately very plausible. But it's very difficult to predict because there are so many different factors, mostly what's going on there on the ground in Ukraine, how the conflict will intensify. And that's why a serious prognosis is almost impossible.
Tell us what the most urgent needs are of the refugees at the moment.
It is freezing cold there. So we have temperatures of -5 degrees or even colder. And the humidity also it makes it probably the real feel of even worse. So it is freezing cold. That's why we need blankets, sleeping bags, we need warm clothes. But this is actually more or less provided now by the Polish government, by volunteers, and by so many supporters from all over Europe, actually. So when I take a look in our UNHCR warehouse, I see boxes with Italian, with Spanish, with English, with German inscription. What is most need in the near future is actually accommodation. So because many of the refugees could stay with relatives and and friends, but what's with the people who don't have friends or relatives? And that's why for the next future, accommodation will be the main challenge.
Well, most of the refugees are still in those countries which border Ukraine, and that, of course, puts an enormous burden on those countries. Are there any discussions about a more organized process for distributing the refugees throughout Europe?
Well, this is a question for European Union, not really for UNHCR, because we try to provide for the refugees, but we are not there yet that we really need some kind of distribution to all European countries. Already now, some of the refugees are going to other countries, and you can see on the train stations in Berlin and other cities a lot of Ukrainian refugees, but this is still a very small figure. We had a planning figure of about 70-30. 70% will stay in Poland, 30% will go to other countries. After talking to hundreds of refugees in the last 15 days, my personal perception is that the figure is even smaller. That probably 10-15% of the refugees would like to go to other countries. Most of them are not staying in Poland, but even in Eastern Poland, because they hope they can back home as soon as possible.
Well, you mentioned how many do hope they'll be able to return home as soon as possible. The reality is that even if the war does end very soon, many areas of Ukraine have been so badly damaged. People's homes have been destroyed. So that alone makes it impossible for people to be able to return to their own homes in the foreseeable future. So are we looking at a situation where these refugees may have to stay in other European countries indefinitely?
Hopefully not indefinitely. And I'm very sure as soon as the hostilities end, the vast majority of the refugees will go back. So that's what they are telling me every day. As soon as they can, they will return. But yes, this will be a challenge not only for a couple of days or weeks. We are talking about at least about months. But I'm counting here on the solidarity of the people in Poland and other neighboring countries, and also in the whole of Europe, actually. And I'm receiving every day literally hundreds of emails and phone calls from people from all over the world, even US, United States, Canada, Japan or something. People are willing to help, and that's why I'm optimistic that at least in this tragedy, we find the solidarity of the people.
Chris Melzer, spokesman from the UNHCR, thank you so much for your insights and also for the work that you do. Well, now let's have a look at some other developments in the conflict in Ukraine. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock says Germany will take in 2,500 Ukrainian refugees who have fled to neighboring Moldova. She made the announcement on a visit to the Moldovan capital, Chisinau. The small Balkan nation has so far given shelter to 100,000 people from Ukraine. The International Atomic Energy Agency says power has been partially restored to the Chernobyl nuclear power station, which is the site of the 1986 nuclear disaster. Ukrainian technicians say they're repairing the plant, which was seized by Russian forces early in the war. The power supply is critical to keep reactor rods cooled. U.S. troops continue to be deployed to Europe, adding to thousands who've already been sent to support NATO allies following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. About 130 soldiers left the U.S. state of Georgia. The Pentagon has ordered roughly 12,000 service members from U.S. bases to Europe.